Welcome to everyone. It's Tuesday, May the 19th at 7 o'clock. We're at the Adelaide Metcalfe Township office for the regular meeting of council. It is now 7 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the agenda for May 19th, 2026 meeting of council be approved. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. You've had a chance to read the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any errors or omissions from the April 20th meeting? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the minutes of the Adelaide Metcalfe meeting of council held on April 20th, 2026 be adopted as printed. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Next up are delegation and timed events. We have a recommendation that the council convene as the Committee of Adjustment at 7:01 p.m. Could I have a mover and a second? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All in favor? And that's carried. The purpose of the upcoming Committee of Adjustment is to provide the Committee of Adjustment and the general public an opportunity to hear from all interested parties regarding the applications being discussed this evening. The public is advised that comments expressed and written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. In respect to the Committee of Adjustment applications, only the applicant or a public body can appeal a Committee of Adjustment decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This must be filed within 20 days from the date of decision. If you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to the clerk. The first application, I guess it's the first and only for this section, is an application for a minor variance A02-2026 27761 Havelock Street, Kerwood. And this is on behalf of Andrea and Derek Bloomfield. So I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to our planner, Ashley Sawyer, who's joining us online.
Thank you, Chair Clerk. So as noted, the subject lands have a municipal address of 27761 Havelock Street, and they are located in Kerwood. They are south of Mackenzie Street and on the west side of Havelock. The lands are predominantly surrounded by residential uses, and there is a parcel just abutting the rear of the property where there is some agricultural lands and crop production. The owners are proposing to construct an approximately 418 square foot addition onto their existing house on the south side of the dwelling. So it's just where the red is shown. And I would just note that the county mapping system can look a little bit skewed in terms of actual property lines just when you add in that Google imagery underneath. So the zoning bylaw requires a 3 meter or 9.84 feet interior side yard setback, whereas 1.22 meters or approximately 4 feet is proposed. This equates to a difference of 1.78 meters or 5.84 feet. So staff are recommending that the relief be granted to permit a minimum distance of 1.2 meters or 3.94 feet instead of 1.22 meters, just as it represents a rounded and more practical measurement that's consistent with the Ontario Building Code. The application was circulated in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The Building Department, Public Works Department, and St. Clair Region Conservation Authority noted no concerns. Emergency Services did provide a standard comment, just that the owners confirmed their existing 911 sign is in good condition and readable, and no comments were received by members of the public prior to my report submission. So for the reasons outlined in my report, staff are of the opinion that the variance meets the 4 tests set out in the Planning Act, and we are recommending that the variance be approved with 2 very standard conditions. The first is that the addition shall be constructed in the same general location and of the same general size as identified in the application. This just ensures the relief granted is specific to what was in the application, while also allowing for some minor construction variation if needed, so long as the zoning requirements are met. And the second condition is just that the owner ensures their 911 signage is posted and readable. And my understanding in speaking with the owner is that the sign is in good condition currently, so this shouldn't be an issue. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Great, thanks, Ashley. Next up, are there any comments or remarks the applicant would like to make? You're good? Okay. All right. Any council questions or comments? Is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to speak to this or online? I don't think there is, so anyone with any vested interest? Yeah. Okay, seeing none then, we have a recommendation before us. There's 2 points. I won't restate them. Ashley's read them through, and her recommendation is to approve. If there's no further discussion, does someone want to make a motion to accept it as presented in the agenda? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, a seconder. Moved by Councillor Campbell. Any discussion? Last call? Seeing none then, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So we have a recommendation now to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment meeting at 7:06 p.m. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Next on our agenda is item 6B, the 2025 audited financial statements. And we have Jennifer Buchanan and Scott Westlaken, or maybe just Jennifer. Oh, no, we got two. There we go. From Graham Scott Enns. And I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to you too, if you don't mind. Thank you. I think, Jen, you're frozen. No, Scott's eyes are moving. You're on mute though, Scott. You have to come off of
They
mute.
open up the.
Sorry.
There we go. You're both, now you're live. With Jen, you were
There we go.
frozen there. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Weather.
Yes, it is the weather. Okay, you missed my whole opening spiel, I assume. Yes. Okay. So I am Jen Buchanan, the engagement partner. I have with me Senior Manager Scott Westlake, and we will present the financial statements. And as I was trying to say, the storm did just reach St. Thomas. So we both momentarily, I lost power, Scott lost internet, but we're hoping that we'll continue on without any further interruptions. I am just, do you have the statements open, Scott? I'm just reloading things.
I do. If you want, I can share and then go from
Perfect.
there.
You share and I'll present.
Sure.
So as per usual, we will walk through the financial statements. We'll answer any questions as we go through. We present the highlights, and then we do have a few other comments relating to the audit that we'll include at the end. So first, we are turning our attention to, actually go one page earlier, page 1, management's responsibilities for financial reporting. So this is consistent with previous years, and it's just our annual reminder that these financial statements are ultimately the responsibility of management. And so to demonstrate that, the CAO and treasurer will sign this letter indicating that they are responsible for financial reporting, as well as the systems in place and the controls at the municipality. We'll turn our attention to the next page now, page 2, which is the independent auditor's report. So it is addressed to the members of council, inhabitants, and ratepayers of the corporation of the township of Adelaide Metcalfe. It is a clean audit opinion, and I'll read the second paragraph of the opinion. In our opinion, the municipality's financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2025, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's a clean audit opinion. The rest of the auditor's report goes through the responsibilities of management, as well as those charged with governance. So the statement that council may be most interested in is that third paragraph, that those charged with governance, which would be council, are responsible for overseeing the municipality's financial reporting process, as you're aware. The next few paragraphs go through the auditor's responsibilities relating to the audit, and those continue on to the next page. Assuming these financial statements are approved this evening, they will be dated May 19th, 2026. I am now turning to page 4, the statement of financial position. So these are the assets and liabilities of the municipality at a point in time, that point in time being December 31st, 2025. You can see there right off the beginning, there's a bit of a change in cash and investments. That's just due to the timing of when some of the GICs matured. So they were sitting in a cash account at December 31st with the intention of reinvesting in the future. So you can see that brief change there. Taxes receivable, a little bit lower than previous year as a result of one of the long outstanding receivables going to tax sale, as well as a few other smaller changes. Accounts receivable, pretty consistent year over year. And we'll see the breakdown of that when we get to note 4. So total financial assets, 16,425,000. Under financial liabilities, significant increase in accounts payable and accrued liabilities, really relating to large capital projects close to year end, in particular the Mulferry road construction. So there's a large amount in the payables for that. Deferred revenue, again, we'll see the breakdown when we get to note 5, but only a small change there. And then the net long-term liabilities decreases as repayments have been made. We'll spend some time when we get to note 10 on the asset retirement obligation relating to the landfills. We see only a modest change there, but we'll talk more about that when we get to note 10. So total financial liabilities, 5,866,000. In our non-financial assets, we have an increase in our tangible capital assets, which really again relates to the large capital project for Mulferry Drive, and then the inventories and prepaids pretty consistent year over year. So you have an accumulated surplus there at the end of the year, 34,694,000. And I will continue on to the next page. So this is the statement of operations and accumulated surplus. And again, my reminder that the budget that's shown here is your original council approved budget, but it's been adjusted for PSAB changes, so accounting standard changes, such as the capitalization of tangible capital assets, so taking them out of expenses, and you'll see that adjustment in note 17. In terms of the year-over-year amounts, everything is pretty comparable to prior year and to budget in terms of property taxes, taxation from other governments, user charges, etc. In terms of the other income, we see a bit of a decrease there. That's where we sort of capture some donations, one-time grants, that type of thing. So that is going to vary year over year depending on funding available. And we do see a small loss on disposal capital assets. That does relate to several assets during the year. It's the net amount of their disposals. So total revenues during the year, 7,301,000. Turning down over to expenses. Again, here you can see things are pretty comparable year over year. In terms of budget to actual, transportation services is a bit lower than budget. It's just some of the budget amount has been carried forward to future periods relating to some of the planned projects. Waterworks and sewer is lower than budget, just less contracted services and materials than budgeted. And then within the garbage collection and disposal, that's also where we see the ARO adjustment is sitting within there. So that's why it's above budget as well. Planning and zoning decreased over prior year and budget, less legal expenses incurred during the year. And then as a reminder, the agriculture line relates primarily to drains. So total expenses, 6,231,000 for an annual surplus for PSAB purposes of 1,070,000. Keep looking to see if there's any questions. Seeing none, I will continue on. So on the statement of changes in net financial assets, there's not too much to highlight here. Most of it's similar to other presentation, but it's a nice quick snapshot of the difference between the acquisition of tangible capital assets and the amortization of tangible capital assets. So I do like to point this out to my municipal clients. You are in a good position. You're in a capital phase where your acquisitions actually outweigh your amortization, which is fine. It just means you're investing at this point in capital. The alternative that I see at some municipalities is where their amortization is higher than their acquisition, which actually means they're not replacing their capital as quickly as they're using it up, but that's not the situation here. So nothing wrong with that, but I do point that out as an interesting metric to look at. Turning to the statement of cash flows. The main thing I wanted to highlight here, just we see the decrease in cash, and that is because of the maturity of guaranteed investment certificates. So I just thought that was a easy spot to see that decrease in investing activities as a result of the sale, and then that increased the cash there. Okay, I am now turning to the notes to the financial statements, starting with note 1 on page 8. So these are the accounting policies of the municipality. There is no changes to the accounting policies this year. They are consistent with previous. So I have nothing really that I wanted to highlight at this point, which will bring us all the way to page 13, note 2. So here we can see the composition of investments held at December 31st. And then if we go down to note 3, taxes receivable. So here's where we see that the main decrease in the taxes receivable does relate to the balance in arrears. Accounts receivable, we see there's a little bit of a different composition while the total balance is comparable. Higher amount of drains receivable, so that's the benefiting landowners, and a lower amount of trade receivable this year than previous year. Most of the other balances relatively comparable, and we see the continued receipt of the payments for the debentures. Okay, I am turning to note 5, deferred revenue. So here you can see the breakdown of the amounts included in deferred revenue, including the obligatory reserve funds. Again, we see the balance has decreased overall from prior year, and that's just spending the amounts that are available, grant amounts that are available to be spent. Okay, note 6 and 7, no changes than previous years. So I am turning to note 8 on page 15. So this is just the breakdown of the long-term liabilities. So you have the total amount of liabilities, and then you have the tile drain loans to leave the remaining part that relates to the municipality, all recoverable from user charges. Okay. Note 10, page 16. So asset retirement obligations. So as a quick reminder, this standard changed a couple of years ago. So it relates to the future liability to close the landfills and estimating how much that's going to cost, and then incurring that cost throughout the life of a landfill. You're in a bit of a unique situation because your landfills are at their useful life. So the Metcalfe site was expected to reach capacity in 2020, and then the Adelaide site actually reached its capacity earlier than anticipated in 2025. So in last year's statements, I believe that date was 2028. So what that means is that we've now caught up the remaining amount to record all of those expenses to the current year, 2025, rather than continuing to accrue expenses each year. So we scroll down just a little bit. So the main sentence that I wanted to add is that the new one we added there at the end. So the Metcalfe site has been closed and is now being monitored as per the post-closure agreement. The Adelaide site has now reached capacity, and the municipality is reviewing further plans for possible expansion. So that's sort of how we've disclosed where you are right now, rather than using the term that the Adelaide site is closed. It's just that it has reached capacity. So you can see there the full amount of the asset retirement obligation divided by site. So 777,000 for Adelaide, 25 for Metcalfe, for that total of 802,000. And just as a reminder, the amount that's set aside in reserves currently relating to this likely expenditure is 492,000. Okay, I will continue on. So on tangible capital assets here, you can see the additions and disposals during the year, including the amount sitting in work in progress at year end, because those projects were not yet completed. You can also see here under infrastructure landfill ARO, so a large amount of amortization during the year. So that's what I mentioned about having to catch up because it closed or reached capacity sooner than anticipated. Okay, we are turning to page 19, note 12. the accumulated surplus. So this is the breakdown of what's in accumulated surplus. I'll start with the easy ones. So we have invested in tangible capital assets of 24 million, and then we have our reserves and reserve funds. And then we have the amounts to be recovered. So we have that asset retirement obligation that we were just discussing for 802,000. And then if you see the final sentence, it is that there's a reserve fund for the 492. And then we have the net long-term liabilities, which relates to the drains. So then we have the remaining amount is the general revenue fund. And what's interesting or worth pointing out is that the amount hasn't changed year over year. And that's because the surplus for the year has already been allocated to reserves. So that has already been done, which is why we don't see an increase in the general revenue fund. Okay, note 13 is required disclosure relating to pensions. Note 14, 15, again, pretty standard disclosure. Note 15, just a different way of showing the expenditures. And then note 16 gets to our financial instruments. The main thing to point out is there's been no change in your risk during the year. There's not new significant debt or a new mix of investments or anything like that that would impact your financial instrument risk. We get to note 17 on page 22. And so this is where I was mentioning earlier that we have the approved budget, which of course nets to a zero surplus. Then we make our adjustments for PSAB purposes, which are primarily going to relate to removing the planned capital expenditures out of expenses. And that's where we get the budgeted surplus of 584,000. Note 18 describes all the different segments that are then presented in the schedule at the end of the financial statements. So if you want to know what's included where, this is a great description of those. And then the final 2 pages of the statements, schedule of segment disclosure, just goes through the revenues and expenses by those segments. So just a little bit more information on the revenue and expenses. So that was my whirlwind presentation. Are there any questions that Scott and I can address on the financial statements?
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions for the team on the screen? Councillor Kingma, go ahead.
Yeah, not so much questions. I think we're in a very, very strong position, I think, especially relative to some of our neighbors. But having said that, there are some pretty obvious risks that we have to be mindful of. And I think the ARO for the landfill is one of them. It did catch us off guard. I would say one of our best approaches is to hopefully expand the landfill and keep it operational, and hopefully budget allocations for the asset retirement obligation are more digestible that way. There's a couple of other obvious issues, like we're relying on property taxes for revenue. That's still our staple that we have to go to. And that's not a very robust form of revenue generation. So that's always a concern. And then I would say the inflationary pressure on our roads, road reconstruction. And even the fire department, I think we have a $1 million apparatus in the asset management plan that just blows my mind that we're up to that pricing range. So there's an awful lot to think about.
Yeah, and with the exception of the landfill, I think that Johnny and his team have done a great job setting up our capital asset management plan. And I think that schedule, it's a bit daunting when Johnny shows it to me and you see what we need to raise every year to remain whole each year. It's quite staggering, actually. So any other comments or questions? Okay, I guess you explained it very well. Thank you very much. Yeah. So we have a recommendation that that council approve the 2025 audited financial statements as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for your time. I hope the office was easy to get along with, and I didn't hear otherwise, so I'm sure it's fine.
No, it was a
So
very
thank you
smooth
very
audit
much.
as per usual. So we pass along our thanks to Johnny and his team as well. The only other quick thing I will mention is that there was an audit findings letter in your package as well. It is a no issues letter, but I still like to say that just so that you know that there was nothing concerning we found as a result of our audit. But
I
thank you very much
appreciate
for your
that.
time this evening.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, next up on our agenda is the consent agenda. Is there anything on there anyone wants pulled out for a discussion? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that items 7A through 7J listed under the heading of consent agenda for the May 19th, 2026 meeting of council be adopted as recommended. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All in favor, and that's carried. Next up on our agenda is item 8, our correspondence. We have a request from the City of Peterborough to support a resolution for the guaranteed basic income. Next up, we have a request from the City of Stratford to support a resolution regarding the correspondence on Bill 21, Protect Our Food Act 2025. We have a request from the municipality of Thames Centre requesting support of a resolution for partnership with Rural Change Makers program. And item D, we have a request from the municipality of Wawa to support a resolution, a request to amend the Land Transfer Tax Act. And lastly, we have a request from the Township of Springwater to support a resolution around Bill 100, Better Regional Governments Act 2026. Councillor McKinnon, go ahead.
I'd like to support this. Council didn't support the strong mayor's power, and I agree with the Township of Springwater on this resolution and would like to see Adelaide Metcalfe oppose Bill 100 by supporting the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Would you, so that's, you'd like to move that? Okay, is there a seconder? Okay, seeing no seconder, that fails. We have a recommendation that council receive and file correspondence items 8A through 8E. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Next up on our agenda are the staff reports. First up is the 2026 municipal election, establishment of a joint election compliance audit committee. I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to our legislative clerk, Michael Barnier.
Thank you. Through the mayor to members of council, this report's being brought forward to satisfy requirements under the Municipal Elections Act. Under section 88.37 of the act, municipalities are required to establish a compliance audit committee before October 1st in an election year. The purpose of the committee is to address matters related to municipal election campaign finances and contributions. Historically, the municipalities within Middlesex County have partnered together to establish a joint compliance audit committee, and staff are recommending the township continue that same joint approach for the 2026 municipal election. I will comment right out that the Marcy and her crew at the county has taken up a lead on this and organizing most of this. So the attached bylaw in terms of reference outline how the committee would operate, including the mandate of the committee, appointment process, meeting procedures, qualifications, compensations, and legislative responsibilities. So the committee would only, there's an initial orientation and training, but it would only meet as needed basis if a compliance audit application is received. And I can comment in the last two municipal elections, no municipality in the county has used this service. And just to give it a historical aspect, we used to share it with the City of London. It was a pretty easy process. We just contacted who the city was using, and we've used those for the last couple elections. I think as a group, we decided try something new, advertising out. So it'll be 3 to 7 members. Members of council, meaning staff, candidates, and registered third parties are prohibited from serving on the committee under legislation. So we're the last one just because we missed our last meeting there. They're going out tomorrow basically for advertisement, but once all Middlesex County municipalities adopt their respective bylaws, the county will coordinate recruitment process on behalf of the member municipalities. Advertising and recruitment costs associated with the process will be handled by the county. In terms of financial impacts, the county members would receive, or the committee members would receive an honorarium of $200 per meeting plus mileage. The host municipality would only incur costs if an application is received within that municipality. Overall, pretty standard and legislatively required process that we've completed jointly in the past. Staff are recommending that council adopt the bylaw establishing the joint Middlesex County 2026 Election Compliance Audit Committee. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Mike? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that council adopt the bylaw to establish a joint Middlesex County 2026 Election Compliance Audit Committee in accordance with the Municipal Elections Act 1996 as amended. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Next up, I'll turn this over to Michael Barnier again. This is regarding council remuneration bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Through the mayor to members of council, this should be fresh in your mind as we just dealt with it last meeting as part of the council remuneration review. One of the recommendations coming out of it was as we only had a full day per diem of $150, that we have a half day per diem. So the draft bylaw is there. Proposing amendments to sections 2.1 and 4.1 of the existing bylaw to reflect this updated restructure. And what we've defined it in the bylaw, it was 4 hours or less. From a financial perspective, the amendment is anticipated to have a positive financial impact by allowing the township to compensate members of council proportionally based on the duration of attendance, while potentially reducing overall remuneration costs associated with shorter duration events. I will say that council does not submit for these quite a bit, so it's almost a moot change in this, but it is good to have that option, and we've noticed that previously. So overall, the amendment provides additional flexibility and better reflects varying attendance durations, while still ensuring members of council are compensated for approved meetings. So staff are recommending that council adopt bylaw 17 of 2026 to amend the council remuneration bylaw and establish a proposed half-day per diem structure. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to make a comment that, yeah, this term of council, nobody puts anything in, but which is fine. I mean, it's an individual decision, but I think the frame of mind of council by reviewing this is we want to also attract people to want to be on council. And I recognize there's, for some people, a financial cost to be away from work and be here. And that's an individual thing. So this by all means doesn't really make a person whole, but it is a consideration. So are there any questions for Mike having made that comment? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that council adopt bylaw number 17 of 2026, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 26 of 2022 to establish a half-day per diem rate for members of council. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, at this time, we will I need a motion to adjourn to closed session at 7:34 p.m. pursuant to section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss the following matters: a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local school boards, specifically the Napier Schoolhouse request for proposals. Could I have a mover and a seconder to go into close? Moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. We'll now go into closed.